Welcome to another episode of the New Human Experience. I have in studio here, not my own studio, the Together podcast studio, my dear friends Mike and Courtney. We're going to be diving into many, many layers that has really been sparked and inspired by the event called The New Human this year in October, Interstellar. And we're going to get into the layers of integration as people that really guide and support and work at the depths that we desire to. Integration is so key. This podcast is called The Living Transmission: From Inspiration to Action, Integrating in the Real World.
All right, the three key points that we're going to be hitting today that you are going to want to stick around for is what is integration as the new human, what failing at integration looks like, and how a new human integrates.
And if you stick around, we'll have a bonus at the end, which is a map.
A practical
map.
And how to get the most out of any event, retreats, courses.
Life, a camping trip.
yeah. Any event.
And a spiritual experience.
Yes. So we are so excited to be diving into this topic of integration. It feels like such a big topic in going out into big experiences, medicine ceremonies and retreats. And we're really excited to have Dr. Kevin Preston in the studio today. This is a collaboration. So we're, whatever platform you're listening to this on, we're going to launch this on the Together podcast platform. Kev, you're going to release this on yours.
You bet. Yeah, it's fun. This is a mashup of podcasts coming together. And really, my intention for this too is to kind of tease out the wisdom that both of you have cultivated by supporting people over and over and over again. And the three of us have been in events together, and we've led lots of events. And, I'll be leading the New Human, Interstellar, and this fall in October. You guys have led retreats and experiences as well. And this is a topic that is so important because I feel like it gets missed a lot. I've missed it in the past. I didn't always bring integration into the experiences that I was cultivating, and we'd create these really powerful peak experiences, and they'd be very transformational. And then afterwards, we got to start really learning more and more about what happens then and how do we support ourselves in integration after leading something, but also certainly all the people that have gone through this experience and had their lives changed. Then what? What happens in the real world after that? And so this is something that I can't wait to get into with you guys.
Yeah.
And I love this idea of the new human, which, we talk about the new earth way and the new human way. And it feels like integration is actually the key, because integration is where we're actually living it. Right? We're not just having these experiences. We're now building a life that is these experiences. And I remember when I first started to have these kinds of experiences, I was going to shamanic trainings and going away for the weekend and having these really profound ceremony experiences and rituals. And then coming home and realizing the contrast between what I was experiencing in those spaces and then what my life was like at home. And then devoting to myself, like, I want to build a life that is that,
Yeah.
And really, that's when the work began, is to actually weave that into this is how I live. And it's cool now to think about, I just went to an event called Earth Daughters, and I went, and it was amazing. And then I came home, and I was like, that is what my life is like. And of course, there's more layers to integrate, but that celebration of, that's the work, is that we build lives that are woven with this medicine.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we want to dive into is we need those experiences. We need the going away. We need going into sanctuary. We need to leave our lives and go on the epic journey, the hero's journey, but then we have to come back. And what happens when we come back? And, I often think of this as we're light weavers, and we're bringing all this beautiful vibration and insight, but now we got to weave it into life. We got to weave it into the moments in the car, the moments with our partner when we're going to bed at night, the moments with our child, when there's a crunchy moment. We got to weave it into all these moments. And how do we do that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the analogy that comes to mind is, if you get in your vehicle, you fire it up, it could be an amazing vehicle, you're revving the engine and everything else. But if you never put it into gear, then you're not getting traction in your life. Like you're not able to actually put the learning and the practices into like usable action steps. And then it doesn't show up in life. And so this is what we want to avoid in some ways by talking about this. We want to share really powerful practices, powerful tools for people that are going out into the world and doing events and doing retreats and breath work and even like shorter things, not just, a weekend thing. It could be an evening event that you go to. It could be a yoga class that you go to. How are you moving into that intentionally, and how are you moving out of that? And then how are you bringing back to your partner or your kids or your families or your workplaces? And I've done this where I've been at really big events and I'm so fired up and I'm so excited and I've learned all this amazing information, and I come back and I fire hose everybody in my life and not really attuning to that they didn't have that experience with me. And then that actually creates bigger gaps, and I'd be trying to close the gap by sharing everything. But I've also learned since there's different ways to share, and there's really healthy ways to share with especially people that are really close in your lives, like spouses, loved ones, kids, family members. And what we're wanting to look at today is how to do that in the best ways we can, even to be aware of it, but then look at the skill sets and the tools of how to make it easier for everybody that you're coming back to and for yourself, because big ruptures could happen and big misses can happen that could be avoidable. And I think this is what I want to pull out of both of you, because you've seen this so many times in clients that you work with. And maybe that's a good place to start, and in the past different events that I've led, then afterwards, sometimes people are going back into their lives. And you made note of it earlier too, that their daily life may not look like how they want it to look yet. And that is a bridge that we want to build for people of like, well, then how do they do that after they've had a big experience?
Yeah.
Which the big experience I want to add could even be, how do we integrate a podcast episode, right? People have so many insights from podcasts, but then like, okay, now what?
Yeah. Online course, an audio book, a podcast, any of these things. The way that I really like to look at integration is, how to take what gets revealed or experienced as an insight or a feeling or, some sort of inner breakthrough, how to now make space for that new version of self in the day-to-day life. Like, how do I get to the root and understand the patterns that are unconsciously running in my day-to-day life? How do I get clarity on what they are, where they come from, so that I can actually start to choose who I want to be in the day-to-day?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what am I going to change and alter so that I can integrate into, a more ideal version of self?
Well, and Mike and I, we are relationship. We work with sacred relationship and conscious parenting. But it's like sacred relationship is our work. And it's interesting because really that's so the key of integration, and it's interesting, Richard Rudd, who's going to be at Kev's or coming in on through the interwaves.
Yeah. A live virtual transmission from Richard Rudd. That's happening.
Yeah.
He'll be in, England, and we'll be in, BC here and connecting
through the,
At the New Human event called Interstellar.
Yes. Anyways, he downloaded the gene keys and he's gifted this to humanity. And one of the things he talks about, and I just love how he talks about it, is, what really makes us have to integrate down into our bones and into our cells as humans is relationship, because this is where we start to bump into each other. It's where, we can have all these insights inside of ourselves, and then we go in to relate with our partner, to relate at the gas station, to relate at our job, to relate, and all of a sudden it's like we smack right face first into other ideas and other, universes that are walking around in other bodies. And that often is where it does get sticky, right? It's also one thing to sit in your seat and meditate in yourself, which of course is like so important. But then what happens as we interface with the world around us? But it's so interesting because in this way, like when I think about the new human and what integration looks like, I think of the new human as the person who intentionally understands that every shift they make in themselves, they now have a sacred responsibility to go and weave that into the world around them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, how do I put this into practice in the world around me? Because it's in that intersection of self and the world around that the real alchemy can happen, right? Where the medicine, where we actually change the world. Because we can have so many insights in ourselves, but be in a silo. And then we might be giving off a nice energy, right? But maybe not building the new world.
Yeah. Well, and I want to circle around and maybe back up just for a moment and ask this question to both of you. What is integration in your mind's eye? And just let's even quantify that a little bit more, because I think a lot of people know the word to some degree, but hearing it through your lens, and especially through the lens of your work, what does integration mean?
Love it. For me, integration is getting in touch with the present truth of whatever it is. You know, like what is the current life that I'm living, and am I consciously aware of how I'm showing up? It's like getting the clarity of that first, and then choosing and deciding, like, how do I want my life to look like? And am I building in the habits or the behaviors to make that happen? Like, can I take an idea or a dream and actually weave it into becoming a new person? It's the phrase that I always attach to integration is, who am I being in the doing? Do I love who I'm being in the doing? Am I even aware who I'm being in the doing? Or do I just am I living in my head of this idea of, what life is?
Yeah. Yeah. It's not just theoretical.
Yeah, it's practical. Like, integration for me is, if I say that I have some dream, as an example, to serve 1 million men with my online offer of the Initiated Man. If you were to look at my schedule, integration would look like, it's clear and evident that in my schedule, there are chunks of time allocated to being the man that is making that mission come true. Like, there's scheduled time in there to build out the content, to have the community call, networking with, the men to make that mission possible. It's, do we actually have tangible, practical evidence that in our day-to-day life, we are holding ourselves accountable and responsible for making the thing happen, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever it is.
Yeah.
Like, is there an adult online that's making space for that, that's evident, that's trackable, that's measurable? For me, integration is measurable.
Yeah, great points.
And then there's kind of two aspects. I mean, integration, when I think of integration, I think of it's having those moments of insight or awareness when I'm in practice. So it might be like at an event or even in my morning meditation. And then it's taking it and I'm actually able to embody that energy while Mike and I are having a crunchy moment, or it's that moment where I do something different in how I'm parenting, when I'm at the grocery store and, it's like, those are the moments that are the big wins. Those are the moments of like, yes, this is coming down and into my body. And now it's here and it's alive. And how to bring it into those moments. That's when I feel like I'm winning at integration.
Yeah.
But in another way too, how I think about integration is there's sort of the involution and the evolution. So there's a part of I think of integration, it's coming into wholeness. It's integrating all the parts. It's alignment, right? And so there's this process of integrating and bringing into alignment and into relationship my body, my humanness, my genetics, my DNA, this package that I was handed, of the earth, with my soul, with my essence, with my higher expression, with spirit. And it's this ongoing process of, okay, this is what's alive in my body. This is what's alive in my daily, everyday life when I'm doing the dishes and when I'm, and then, this is what is there when I'm in my most connected, elevated, heartfelt state. And it's this process of continuing to weave those two together. And sometimes they're more integrated, like, oh, they're both here right now. And other times it's a bit like ping ponging. Like in this moment, I'm more connected to my higher self. Oh, in this moment, I'm more in my humanness. But this journey of realizing it's about bringing both together.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, there's so many beautiful layers in what you both shared around that. For me, it's almost like functional strength. Like when I'm exercising and I'm working out, I'm not working out just to be able to move that same weight the same time I go to the gym or use a barbell. I'm using it in my life anyway when I'm running, hiking, biking, doing things that then I have strength that I can apply to all other aspects, that I'm resilient to injury, that I'm stronger, I'm flexible, because I want it to have real world application. And to me, the real world application really starts humming with power and magnetism in people's bodies when their head is aligned with their heart. And that is what integration means for me, is that there's this congruency in the body where we're not at odds with our system. Well, like what you said, Mike, too, if somebody has a dream, this is what I want to do. But in the real world, they're not actually taking any steps or actions towards that. And this is something that I know you guys coach people in as well, especially relational, is I want this relationship. I love this person. They mean so much to me, but their day-to-day actions may not actually be reflected and may not be received by the other person at all. It's like, actually, I feel like you don't care about me. And you're like, what are you talking about? You're my most important person in the world. It's like, yeah, but your actions continually show something else. So I'd be really curious to hear kind of real world examples of maybe people that you've supported, couples that you've supported, where you see where integration's not happened very well, or maybe one of them went to an event or had this breakthrough experience, and then either it comes together really good. Maybe there's a couple examples of they did it really well, and here's what they did. But maybe some, we mentioned at the start, here's what like failing, and maybe that's not the best word for it, but here's what failing at integration looks like. And
like a face plant. It's
yeah,
like
a bit
you're trying.
You stepped on the rake the moment you walked in the door from the big event that you went to, and then things got really challenging and messy, and maybe it didn't need to be that way if somebody had more capacity or skill sets that they'd learned about integration in general. And so let's get a bit granular, and what kind of examples have you guys worked with or seen, or where the big misses could happen?
Yeah. Yes. I want to touch that, and just what you said hit this key point that I think is just, it couldn't be more simple. And that's understanding that integration, to know if it's being achieved, is this, self-analysis of, are my thoughts, are my feelings, and are my actions all aligned? Like,
yes,
if there's alignment in those three, integration is happening.
I would also say, though, like, can I add a little caveat?
Please, yeah.
Is like, we also don't want to put our pressure, because sometimes the failure in integrations, we put so much pressure on ourselves that it all has to be aligned. Like sometimes it can just be like, I'm working towards integration. I'm going to bring this one thought into more integration, or I'm going to bring, right?
Yeah.
I just want to speak to that part that can happen in consciousness where it's like, if I'm not totally aligned, I'm not doing it right. And it's like, no, it's like riding a bike. There's a bit of a,
I think even what you're saying is such a good barometer and point, because it's a practice. Integration isn't like some outcome where I've now achieved perfect integration.
Yes.
It's like, the human experience in my lens is the process of learning integration.
Yeah.
Like, how do we take this big soul spirit essence and squeeze it into this dense meat suit that's full of all this generational weight and trauma, and like
just the density of earth itself.
And earth itself, that's the process of integration, which I think is the biggest ingredient and touch point, which is why we wanted a whole episode devoted to it. It's a practice. But even what you said there is, yes, there's the version of like, I'm not doing it perfect, or I failed, but it's like, it's just information. Oh yeah, my thoughts and my feelings and my actions didn't align there. but it's just like a loving nudge to get back
Mm-hmm.
into right action.
Mhm.
Like, oh yeah, right. What was the thought? What's the dream? What's the vision? How would I need to feel, or how would I be in my day that would align with that dream? Whoa, I'm doing the actions that matches that. That feels so good.
Mm-hmm.
And then it brings us back into that lane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so the fail, I mean, one of the fails is
We've
and
seen it with couples. I
yeah.
think that's a good point to use as with like an example of a couple.
Okay.
Or did
I
you
don't
do it?
are we on the same page?
Well, I thought you said with us.
Okay. This is where what I was gonna
Follow
say.
your- yeah, follow
Okay.
your flow.
I was just gonna speak to what can happen for couples is we've seen this where people keep showing up, they go to retreats, they go take the course, they read the book, right? And they understand it. We even had a couple talk about this at a retreat. They
Yeah.
understand it all in their minds. Like they get it intellectually.
Yeah.
And they get it on the bigger concept. Like, of course we need to work as a team. Of course I need to care about your feelings. Of course I need to, right? But then what happens is when they go home, they're not learning like what's the one next step, the one next tool that I need to do so that something different happens. Like, so part of it is not even thinking that way. Just thinking if I have the insight, if I have the awareness, it's just going to happen. Right? Which inevitably it won't, because we actually have to choose to push against the old pattern to do something different. And we all know at the beginning, when we bring in a new pattern, it's hard work, especially the first time we do it. It's hard. So if we're just going to go with like, I'm just going to go home and it's just going to happen, it will not. It will not, because you'll have to push against the old thing. Right. And what that inevitably leads to is being frustrated and blaming each other, and then wanting to keep going and taking in more information and being around more and more and more and more and more. But you go home and there's like this collapse, right? Like nothing's actually changing, but neither one in the partnership is taking the risk to actually do the new thing. Yeah. Or maybe haven't taken the time to really think about, okay, so if the thing that needs to change is I need to get better at listening to your feelings. Okay, but what does that actually mean? Like in the day-to-day, the next time you have a big feeling, not just theoretically, what would I do? Mm-hmm. You know? And what would I say? What do I have to do in that moment? And so much of what we end up doing at the end of our sessions is giving people very bite-sized pieces of like, okay, so this is the practice that you're going to do.
Which I'd say in the arc of us supporting couples, this is what we've had to learn over time. I'd say at the beginning, there was more of like this is my experience, there's more of a therapeutic essence. And what I've discovered is there's a limitation in therapy. It's like what I'd say our work is now is therapy and coaching as one, like both of those pieces are needed. Because if there isn't that accountability piece of, well, what are you going to do different in the day-to-day between this drop down, this experience? Mm-hmm. Like, as an example, we'll support a couple in a practice that brings them into contact with their intention of they want more intimacy. They want to learn how to slow down. We'll bring them into that. We guide it.
And they're like, oh, there you are. This feels good. We feel connected.
Yeah.
Oh, we want this.
Oh, this is so juicy. Oh my God. I feel so seen. I feel so understood.
Oh, this is what we need.
Tears and the emotions actually get to release and so beautiful. But then if we just leave it at that, most of the time what's going to play out is the pattern, the default subconscious patterning, which drives 95% of how we show up in the day-to-day. That's just going to kick in. And so what we found really helpful is like ensuring that there's something to hold accountable, that integration is happening of what's the new action. So great, we just had an experience here, but how can you now replicate this experience happens more of the time? So, we'll do,
plan 2 nights this week. We're going to do this practice.
And sometimes that even means let's get the schedule out while we're all in the room together. What days are you willing to commit to this practice? Mm-hmm. And then having them from their own agency saying the words. I commit on this day and that day and this day for this amount of time, we're going to do this. And what are you going to do in that? What's going to be different? And actually, it's been wild to watch. Sometimes it's even hard to say, which actually brings evidence to how deep the pattern is of not doing the thing, which is why it doesn't happen. So no shame or guilt. It's like that's the program that's running by default.
Yeah.
If we want to integrate something new and different, we need to like have clarity of what's the new thing to weave in into the body, into the experience.
And it's going to be hard because there's a flow to life. There's a structure to life. So we're going to have to like push against the forces that are like, there's not enough time.
Yeah.
Or, we've been through this where we're like, yeah, we're going to commit to that. And then all of a sudden it's like, I'm like, okay, I'm showing up on time. And then Mike's like, oh, I just need to do this one thing. And then I'm like, oh, well, Mike's doing that one thing, so I'm going to go do my one thing. And then pretty soon it's like, wait a minute, we didn't, it happens so easily. And we have to be so mindful of what does it look like to actually put this into practice. And the other thing I just want to say is, if you go off to an event and you have these insights and you come home, it actually takes a lot of courage to do the new thing. It's vulnerable. Yes. What if I'm not met? Yes. What if I show up and I do that new thing and my partner gets mad? What if I show up and do that thing and there's a bunch of pushback pressure from people around me? And of course, those things do happen. Yeah. Mike and I often, we like to share this, that it's a common thing that can happen for us, that when one of us goes off to an event or goes through a big breakthrough, and we watch Taking Turns, Mike's like, I just had this great breakthrough, and instantly all kind of have an insecurity come in, and all feel a little bit of like push away, push back, because it's like, it's new, something's going to change. And Mike has to be courageous enough to hold to that new insight and to introduce it into our lives. And I have to be courageous enough to reluctantly move towards it. And there is this moment that's uncomfortable. There's this moment that is tender. There's this moment that's vulnerable,
It's true.
As opposed to just doing the same old thing.
Mm-hmm. Well, and you mentioned it a couple of times. It likely might be difficult because you're going to have to override the previous pattern that was at play. And that doesn't happen just by itself, that we have to intentionally show up in that to create a new skill set. And it might be a bit wobbly and messy for a time. So I think that can be part of it is, when somebody returns from a big breakthrough, whether that was a session that they had with you guys or coaching session or whatever it was, or they went to the New Human event and they had all these experiences, they learned a whole bunch, they educated themselves on things they didn't understand. Now they understand it at a bigger level and they walk in the door at home, maybe quite excited, but sometimes, because I've had patients tell me this too, they get home and then they're instantly triggered and frustrated because their partner's not meeting them in what they immediately expect to happen. Or they start pointing out all the ways their partner's wrong or bad or inadequate or whatever it is. And that creates huge ruptures. So I'd love you both to kind of speak to that, because I've heard this exact example happen so many times. And it's true. Often in relationships, there's so much growth and everything that one person's being pulled in a particular direction. They want their person to come with them. Maybe they're not quite on the same page, but it can also be how they're showing up in that or not showing up in that creates the pushback or the avoidance, or now there's actually a big gap in between both of them and they don't know how they got there. And it wasn't just that one of them went to an event that the other wasn't present to. It was how it was brought back together or not brought back together. So if somebody is listening that was at our event last year and that's happened, because we talked about this earlier, like a lot of people after big experiences, they might make pretty big decisions that might be too hasty. They might not be. They might be the right action, the right way, or the right thing for them. It might be their pathway, but a lot of the times you can see it's almost out of reaction, or it's about having like really big feelings that haven't fully integrated yet. And they're already taking those actions. They're reacting in a way that is really powerful and really strong. That doesn't necessarily take everybody into that consideration, and it could be done with more grace or handled differently. So yeah, what would you guys say around that and that example? You've gone and done something, you're on your way back, and maybe you're coming back to your parents maybe you're coming back to a relationship, or you're walking in work Monday morning with huge insights about the business and the company that could be helpful. Then what?
Well, that was like that woman, right? When I said I ran into a woman who had been to the New Human, just as an example, right? This is an example. And she's like, oh, the thing is that I'm struggling with is that every time I go to these things, but when I go home and I walk into my home, I am so angry at my husband and at my children and at my work. And then I just end up just raging at everybody. And it's like, oh yeah. And then she's like, but then I don't think that's it. It's like totally.
Well, and we can understand why, because maybe
Totally.
they've had their eyes open. They've had a huge perspective shift. They're now seeing a new picture. And then you have to face the anger, the grief, all the other places where you didn't experience what you're experiencing now. But there's a bridge there that is to be built.
Yes.
It's so important. And just bringing it back to this piece of like, anyone who's listening who knows the gene keys, you'll understand the immensity of what the gene keys are. Like there's a lot of transmission that's happened from it. And something that Richard talks about regularly is if you were in my day-to-day life, you would see that I'm human and I am still learning to integrate these transmissions. So here's the guy who's given all these downloads of all these epic gene keys and all the acidic levels, and it can be easy to project onto these leaders or gurus like it's like they're enlightened, they're like perfect. And he's like, yeah, watch me with my kids and you'll see how human I am and where my shadows live. And that's where they show up the most. He'll even openly say is with kids. And I think, coming back to this piece is it's humbling to go to an experience that's so expansive and can be exciting and hit all of my experiences, hit all those little like wounded places that didn't get to experience, that level of community and coherence and resonance and insights and excitement and joy and dreams. But then it's like, yep. And then like you beautifully said, then we're going to go back to life and we're going to bump up against all the difference to that. Like what doesn't match that. And, different personalities. And, but there's other people in the field that have needs and their needs are different. And I need to learn how to move around those too. And I think it's a humbling process to actually start to weave it in to the relationships, this is what Courtney and I are so passionate about. Is the relational part. How do we take these big pieces that come from an experience like the New Human and then now look at, what's the thing that wants to be birthed? What's the thing that wants to happen? And then how do I gently come back and be curious about, how would I bring this into my day-to-day life? Something that we think is so important in this place is like from an experience like that, coming back from a place of vulnerability, like, I'm starting to have these insights and realizing I've had this pattern of doing this. These are the ways I haven't been showing up. Have you noticed that it's almost like starting with self before, starting from like this grandiose place of, everyone around me is an idiot or they're not doing it. I've got the insights. I've got the ahas. And it's like,
yeah. Yeah. Cause like in terms of like what this looks like when people come home reactive, right? This is, and I've done this.
I've done this.
I think like we can all say we've done it in some way. And this is what we're learning in the new human way of integrating as a collective. But, is we come home and first of all, we point the finger, right? We point the finger. Oh, I see what's wrong with you now. Right? We go and we have insights about this is what's wrong with my partner. This is how they're not meeting me. This is what's wrong with my boss. This is what's wrong with my friend. This is what like this, right? Instead of, and we're going to dive into this a little bit more of what it looks like to actually own, wait, what's happening for me? But that's one example of the reactivity, right? Is that we're seeing what's wrong around us and pointing the finger. But the thing is it doesn't mean that when we come in changed in ourselves that the field can't change, right? But at first we're going to notice the contrast. Yes. So we come in, with this new information in our body and in our being. And now there's going to be a process, when new information comes into a system, the system does not automatically shift. It's a process that happens over time, And one of the biggest pitfalls people make too is they come in, and from that elated, excited place, they want to share all these amazing experiences. I've had this so many times, and we've had this where I come in and I was just at temple and this happened and that happened. And Mike's like, well, I changed a bunch of diapers and I got elbowed in the face a whole bunch. We're just in a different place, right? And what can happen is if I'm excited and I'm elated and I want to come in and tell my partner, and then suddenly, they're not open to hearing it. Wait, what? You don't want to hear that right now? Whoa, and then we can start to make stories about you're not open to this new me, this kind of thing that can happen. Or even our partner might push away. But remember, when we go to an event, it takes 3 or 4 days for us to get to this level of elated state. And then we walk in the door and we think that our partner is just going to be in that elated state with us, but they didn't go on that 3 or 4 day journey, right? And so this is where we can again start pointing the finger and start to tell ourselves a story. And one of the things we really wanted to dive into is one of the shadows of this is where we can come back after doing our work and we're in this elated energy and we start to make a story about how we're better than. I'm the one that's doing my work. I'm the one that's now of a higher frequency. I'm the one that really sees. And we can start to make a story about now how somehow we're better than. And this is a huge one that chips away at so many relationships and will, instead of creating more harmony in your life and more goodness, it'll actually put you in even more isolated and more distressed.
Yeah. Some of the best wisdom that I've received from going to an event and having some big life-changing experience in the time there is having the people who are experienced in how to bring that back into day-to-day life and integrate. The greatest wisdom is, okay, great. You really own what just happened. Own your experience, let it land, let it be there, soak it up. But remember, you're going back into other people's worlds too. And find how you can bring all of this overflowing energy that you have and how can you contribute to what you're going back into. So as an example, if you have a family, the guidance in this place was, this is from a men's initiation experience I went to. Said, walk in the door, give your partner presents, look into their eyes, give them a kiss and ask how you can help. Do you want to I'll do the dishes. I'm going to go do the laundry. Hey, why don't you go have a rest? It's that would be a way to come back into the world as an example
and
to
bring
actually
resource.
Bring all that resource that's bubbling inside and figure out how to actually build the field up that already exists. It's make it better.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you how many women in particular, but I'm sure there's a male version of this. But they're and then there's this edge where the masculine comes home and he wants to share about this exciting thing and that exciting thing. And the woman's just can you not see that I have a 3-year-old screaming at me? There's food on the stove. And then the masculine is saying she doesn't meet me in what I'm excited about. And this is where this huge miss can happen and these stories happen. But it's literally just this moment where you're coming in resourced and the other person is knee deep. And they just took care of life while you went off to have this amazing experience.
Yeah. Well, and what I see, and I've experienced this in the past myself, I've worked with tons of families, individuals, all ages, clinically, and then at retreats and events, and even, shout out to the way a lot of this happened was Collective Hearts retreats for any OGs listening here.
9 retreats.
9 retreats, and seeing where we're at now and understanding how the nervous system works and looking at, okay, what are other practical things that happen before you go to an event? There's so much that can be done instead of, reacting to then all the shifts and changes that maybe are unexpected or miraculous, which is amazing because I've seen people's lives change from going to events. I've had my life change from going to amazing events, and I was different after. And certain things did land and integrate in the event, and then I was able to work on it more when I got home. But if you're out there going to an event, any event maybe, and even something that's a short thing, think about what you want life to look like after, and then what are the ingredients that you need to build chances of success. So if you're burnt out, your love tank's already running on empty, chances are then you add a big shift to that or a big peak experience and you come back, there's going to be a bigger gap there and even more difficulty. And what I mean by the love tank is if you're relating with somebody, and again, this could be with kids, and we've talked about it as well with your little guy. If his cup is full with connection and presence, there's more space for other things to be added into the mix. But if we're not feeling that way, especially with intimacy, and the love tank is pretty empty because we haven't been feeling met and the other person as well, and then you add a whole bunch of new ingredients and new shifts and changes, and we don't have maybe the patience to allow that to land, then it creates huge distance and ruptures that sometimes don't actually ever get repaired because there was already distance and then more happen. So I want people to really go into events being pretty realistic about how they're doing and how they're feeling and the terrain of their lives, and starting to actually build those pieces in before they go do something. How's your nutrition? How's your sleep? What can you start adjusting and changing or creating some morning rituals around to build stability before you step into something that might create some instability in the best way possible? But then you got to work with that. The event isn't necessarily the work because that's not your daily life.
Yeah, that's such an important piece. Like as an example, something I've had to learn about myself to integrate things well is, let's say I'm going to an event like when at the New Human and prepping to speak for it, and there's a lot of work that goes into it. If I take ownership of my own lived experience, I know, God, I was adopted twice in the first year of my life. Transitions are hard. So if we want to look at integration and what this looks like practically, as an event like this, what I would do is like set up therapy before the event.
Yes.
I'd set up therapy after the event, knowing that I'm going to need help and support to really anchor in to the regulation of my nervous system, into the confidence of what I'm stepping up to into the role, work with any pieces that are like the nigglies, so that I can go up and show up to the thing and really experience it in the best way possible. And then also knowing support will also be needed on the other side to help it land, process it. Like what I've loved about that is setting up a coaching call or a therapy session gives actual space to then just go and share and allow things to take up more space so that it can land. Maybe feelings come up. Maybe it's like, how to actually weave it back into the body and the day-to-day life.
Well, and this is where we can start to learn about ourselves, right? Because we all need something different. And the other thing to understand about integration is some of the integration we need is to actually process what we experienced, like to actually share about what we experienced, to actually like munch on what came up. But then equally as important, and I think this can get missed, is just doing nourishing things. Like sometimes the most integrating thing for me is, last year when I came back, I had this huge experience speaking on stage to 500 people, like meeting Zach Bush and Charles Isaac, this whole experience. And then I come home and I actually intentionally like went to the pumpkin patch and just didn't talk about it. Just went to the pumpkin patch and like picked at a pumpkin and had my friend there and just like had my feet on the earth and breathe the air, because there's something about coming back and like, and here's life, So like, here's this big expansion. Oh, and here's life. And, talking with my friend and looking in her eyes and all these things that just, they nourish our nervous system so that we can hold both these big shifts and here's life, and life continues on, and we keep eating and we keep sleeping and integration is about both expanding and then also having the ground, and this learning how to do both at the same time.
Yeah. Something I'd love to hear from you, Kev, because there's so many real practical experiences, especially like this body piece. Let's say clients coming in and taking your remedies or something like that. What have you noticed with those clients where the most amount of success happens or the most amount of integration? Like, what does that look like?
Definitely there's like the before, during, and after. And if you think of it's like climbing a mountain or running a race, you're going to prep if you want to have any level of success. You're going to train, you're going to drink clean water, you're going to nourish, you're going to get treatment. And so I think sometimes in a lot of the experiences available now, people are forgetting about the physical body and that we live in this physical body. And so I love acupuncture for before and after. It is so helpful to create harmony and move any stuck energy, to integrate any energy that's there, but both on a mental, emotional level and a physical level. So I find, and part of the intention of us talking about this is we want to create a bridge for people. We want to be able to have all of this energy moving, and emotional energy, but we're still in our bodies, that we want our bodies to feel good. So obviously I'm biased. I'm a Chinese medicine doctor. I love acupuncture, but I love it because of how I feel. It makes me feel like I just took huge deep breaths and I've come into the most relaxed state. And from that relaxed state, I can process and integrate so much more, but my body can actually feel it. And my body can feel calm and regulated in changes, in new insights. And, you know, maybe things got stirred up a little bit and it keeps bringing me back to center, and it creates physical and energetic alignment between your heart and your head and your nervous system too. So I would highly recommend, whether it's acupuncture or whether you have a breathwork practitioner or a massage therapist, a somatic therapist, chiropractor, to not forget about the physical body, and that you can actually be doing prep work before going into an event, a retreat, whatever it is, maybe even just traveling. Give yourself a chance to be successful and to be held in that, to work your way up to it. And then afterwards, you said it already. And I remember talking to people about this last year, like book sessions ahead of time with your team, with your people, with your village. And sometimes we need to speak it out. That is how some people process in conversation. Other people, like myself, I need both, but I need to go into the forest. And so I know it can be challenging, but I'm going to challenge people to do this anyway, to maybe pre-plan time after the event, because I've also done this where I've facilitated and I'm fully in holding space for so many people. And then I get back and I'm in the clinic the next morning. I don't even have a chance to land and integrate my experience of holding space for others. How can I help them in the best way if I'm not looking after myself? So over time, I started taking more space to give myself at least a day or two after coming out of facilitating a really big experience, just so I could land in that too, so that I could actually take my experiences and become a better facilitator. And same thing on the receiving end. If you can, take some time, take some space to go slow, to let things land. Because if we stay moving so quick in this world that we're in, hyper-stimulated, a million things a day, I don't believe the body or the nervous system can actually begin to integrate those experiences before you're then adding another one. And this is sometimes, I think, the pitfalls is people are choosing a lot of heightened peak experiences weekend after weekend after weekend, and they haven't really had time to unpack or land in what they kind of set loose in their system. So acupuncture is really, really helpful, really healthy touch, like hands-on, either with, you know, trusted allies in your life or professionals, and even maybe inviting the right people and being discerning when you arrive back at when to share your experience and who to share it with. Maybe you have a really close friend and you're saying, hey, you know what? I'm feeling a whole bunch about my wife now that I didn't really see and feel before. And it's kind of rocking my boat. I can't unsee these things. And having a really trusted ally to help process and burn some of that off, so you're not bringing extra charges and extra polarity that actually maybe you needed to just work with yourself. And it wasn't about the other person. Often it's not. That could be really helpful. Hey, can we meet for coffee? Can you just hold space for me where I try and work out some of these things? And, you know, Mike, you've helped me with that a ton. Courtney, you've helped me with that a ton, and things I've been through in my life where I know you'll understand, or I just need to tell you some things. And can you help reflect some of these things that I'm not necessarily seeing? Or now I'm in a spiral of confusion. I've set a lot loose in my system and I'm trying to find my ground again. Can you help land that? And you've both done that in a professional sense for me and also friendship. And I have other really amazing people I'm grateful for in my life that I know I can bring my vulnerabilities to, or I can bring myself to, of, can you help me deepen into this? And then I'll treat myself with acupuncture. and I'm like, oh, thank goodness for being able to do this. Or I'll trade treatment with another practitioner and we'll integrate in that way. So I want people to kind of expand their thought horizon. Don't forget about the physical body. Tend to your heart, tend to your nutrition and healthy food after, the best that you can. And it's not to shame you if you're, drinking alcohol and eating a lot of sugar, but those have real impact. So if you want to set yourself up for success, give yourself a chance to maybe alter your diet before going into a big event or going into an experience. Clean out things a little bit, minimize things a little bit, start shutting down extra stimulus and overwhelm that you don't have to meet in the same way, so you can actually take something in. And it's like the student mind. If your cup is full going into something in a negative sense, I guess, you're not going to be able to take much in. And then you're not actually going to get a lot out of the experience because you're not receptive. You have way too many other things going on and you're just going to throw it on the pile and forget about it afterwards. And like, I don't really get anything out of that. And it's like, well, what you bring into it and how you show up is going to be directly related to what you get out of it.
Yeah, it's so true. It makes me think about, going to these new human events and other retreats. What I've noticed as a really common theme that I think can be relatable is a lot of people in those experiences, one of the pieces that they are so excited about is being in that level of community, being in that level of connection, of resonance, and whoa, I can be myself here. And oh my God, where have all these people been? But then they can go back into life and just kind of stay around the same people. And I feel like such a helpful, ingredient that you're talking about that's practical to help the integration is, weaving it into like an inner circle, into relationships where there's trust. If there isn't any, go find some. Like actually find the places where this new version, this new human version of yourself can actually be here, can be welcomed, can be heard, can be understood. I think that's such a big part of integrating is actually being seen.
Yeah. Yeah. We need the village.
Yes.
We need community. I know there is probably people listening to this right now that you're already planning on coming to the event and you're coming by yourself. And I've heard from people directly that it's scary to do that. They don't know anybody. They want to come, but they're not really sure how they're going to be on their own. And they often do find soul family there. They find their village there. But sometimes we need to be very intentional about that to connect with people at the event, get their number, get their email, build your community that way. And it might be vulnerable and you might feel shy to do that, or that's not normally something you do. But I think it's really, really important. And that's also why we're building in these pieces. So I'll share for the audience that we have a bell tent that we've rented for the new human event. That's not part of the big tent, but it's going to be the together integration space. And because you guys know integration so well, and I want you to talk about the together community that you have, it's not just a one-time thing. And I think that's where the rubber hits the road, is like the regular inspired touch-ins, the regular action, getting supported regularly, learning regularly, that we need to be able to show up in a repeatable way. That's what builds change over time. It's not necessarily one big shift. It's like meditation. Meditation for 2 minutes a day consecutively is going to have a bigger shift than doing 1 4-hour session every 6 months or something like that. So I'd love you to share about community and the villaging aspect, about the together community. And then I think you guys have some other community ideas on the way too. And I'd love to hear you speak about that.
Yeah, I'd love to speak about the communities, but just before that, kind of weaving in, if you've listened this far, we promised you this bonus of like the practical map. We're kind of talking about pieces and elements right now. But this practical map of going to any of these experiences, having the online book, or, whatever it is that wants to be woven into the day-to-day life, we want to just give you like some key points of what are the things you can actually do. If you have a pen and paper, write them down. This is the map. Do you want to start with the first point?
Yeah, the first one is start with self. So when you get home, it's like, how do I tend? We're talking about it, right? How do I tend myself? What's changing in myself? What do I need to do different for myself? What patterns are new? So it's just like really connecting in with self and noticing the tendency to want to make it about other, right? And maybe in the self, there is a part of you that's like, I actually don't know if I want to be with my partner. And there's space for that, right? But it's like being with that with yourself. What is that in me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Such an important piece. And the second one here is community. We've talked a lot about it here, the importance of community and connection and support to help things land. Who are the people that you feel safe with? You know, if you don't have them already in your day-to-day life and you're planning to go to the new human, I'm already going to encourage you and stretch you. Go, you know, and each day that you're there, go meet someone new, go start a conversation, start to build the relationships while you're there, knowing that that's something that's needed in your life. And if you don't, we are in an abundance in this world right now of coaches and therapists. There's so many different modalities that you can start to experiment with to find someone safe enough to really, you know, build out that human part where we really need like integration, a big part of it on the relational lens. We have to feel seen, heard, and understood.
It's a need.
It's
an
deep
actual need. And so, and it can be met. And sometimes that might be the thing that you're going to do at the end of the event. If that was the one thing you changed is I'm going to find some community. I'm going to find an ally. I'm going to find that would change your life.
It will change your life.
Yeah.
That has been the number one thing that's changed my life is the relationships made at the events that were nurtured and starting to move into a place like this. And then the next piece is your daily practices, getting to know which ones you already have that really work and feel good, that are authentic, that land. Like, let's say you go to the new human and you experience some breath work and you're like, oh my God, that was life-changing. Great. Now start to weave that into the day-to-day, you know, and these daily practices don't have to be these huge, like time-consuming things. It could be yoga, breath work, meditation, you know, journaling.
Mm-hmm. And then the fourth one is to communicate with the people that are in your life what you're working on changing. So instead of coming home and saying, you're not this or this is not, you know, just update people. Whoa, this is this is the insight I have. This is who I'm going to now work on becoming. And it's amazing when we update the people in our life in this way that's not blaming, not expecting anything of them, but just updating them. This is what I'm going to be working on. It brings people into the journey, regardless of where they're at, right? In their consciousness. If you're noticing like, well, they won't understand. But if you keep it simple, like this is what I'm going to start doing, it'll help everybody show up for this shift for you.
Yeah. And the last ingredient here is boundaries. Getting really clear on the boundaries that have maybe been missing and start to get really clear on what the authentic yeses and the nos are and start to bring them into relationship with other, but also self. Like one of the key things that can really help make space for the new self is like getting real with self. Or what are my not to do's? We're really good as a culture of building out the to-do list, but like, what's the not to do list? Like, what are the things that aren't helpful? What are the things that are draining energy? Am I eating too much sugar? You know, you described earlier about clients that can do your epic remedies and experience so many changes, but they might be eating Big Macs every day. And like, that doesn't help it land or integrate. So what's the not to do? What should I be dropping or leaving behind to make space for the new part?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so just, you know, write out that map, feel into it, and know that integration starts with the littlest thing. Like integrating one thing when you get home will trickle into huge, right? And so sometimes it's just giving ourselves permission to get clear, like what's like the one thing I'm going to work on or the one thing that I'm going to take away. And so we're excited because we have different ways that we can support people in an ongoing way. Yeah. And one of them is if you're tuning in on the New Human podcast, is our podcast. So we have a relationship podcast where you can tune in and get support from us in that way.
Which is called Together.
The Together podcast on sacred relationship and conscious parenting. And the other way is we actually have a beautiful online community for couples. So for conscious couples who are wanting support, who are wanting to grow. And that in itself is a huge undertaking. And so the community, we have an online portal with information. We have live calls twice a month where we dive into practices. And the couples that we're working with are noticing really big shifts. Lots of what did someone say recently? This is worth 5 times a therapy session. Yeah. And I would pay 4 times more than what we're paying.
Yeah.
Because that's how big the impact has been of meeting twice a month, being with other couples, getting the practices. Because let's be real, relationship is huge. It's uncomfortable. It's like a wide terrain, and getting support is very helpful.
And it hits, so many of those needs of the being seen, heard, and understood around other couples where, oh, them too. That was been some of the big feedback of couples get to experience, I'm not alone. We're not the only ones, which actually already starts to soften, the pain that's there.
And people have been having pleasure breakthroughs, just adding a little pleasure breakthroughs in relationship.
And this is really, yes, it's a resource, and there's resources like this out there. And what really differentiates this one is this is a place where you get to be that couple that is inspiring change in the world. You get to be a revolutionary couple that inspires the people around you of like, what we love watching with our couples is you can feel something's different. Like, what are they doing?
Yeah.
And then Mike has an exciting offering that's going to be launching, and Kevin's going to be a part of it. Do you want to share?
Yeah. So this is, and just a name. So the online Together community, that is a resource that's already going and functioning, every other Monday. And then something that's in waitlist phase right now, about to launch, so close to launching, is the Initiated Man. And this is going to be this is a labor of love, where we're going to be able to bring men into a space where they get to cultivate the remembering of brotherhood that they've been disconnected from, where they can start to create that change from living from the head and really dropping into the heart and learning how to lead with love, learning how to lead with clarity of purpose and mission, and the confidence and the satisfaction of how to actually meet their partner. And, it's going to be an incredible space.
And also, like, having these two leading something like that together is going to be profound, because you are such epic supporters of each other, and you show up in brotherhood, and you do your work, and you integrate and integrate and integrate. And so to be in a field of practice will be huge.
For
and
us,
normalizing too.
For us, 10 years of practice.
Whoa.
Yeah. It's been a while. Really grateful for your brotherhood and how you show up. And this is what I want to say about like the coupleship as well, because I knew both of you separately before you met. And I think this is also a differentiator for what you guys are offering in the world. Is I've been able to witness, and it feels like such a privilege to witness the actual lived experience of these things that are being taught. It's not just intellectual. I get to see it. I get to see all the various layers of all those things. And it feels like, oh, what a sweet and amazing and sacred thing that I get to be involved in your lives in the way that I do, and how much you've both grown in that, like individually, but together and as parents. And it is one of the coolest things that I've ever been able to see. And I often ask both of you questions about these things to help me, find my grounds and to integrate more and more and more. And you mentioned it, with the mapping around integration, there's a couple of things, and it's like, really, it's communication. That if we can communicate, and I could imagine somebody saying, hey, I'm really excited, I'm going to an event, I'm kind of nervous though, I don't know what to expect, and I feel like it's going to change me intuitively. I know shifts are going to happen, but I don't know what that's going to look like. And saying to your partner, or maybe your friend or close ones that you can relate with, I'm really excited to land on the other side. Like, can we come together afterwards and, share, and, we'll see where I'm at. And I'm kind of nervous. It might shift some things with us and have some vulnerability. And I think that's the curiosity that we can show up with, is we might go through some changes, and that might create change for the people in our lives. And that may or may not end up, really landing in a beautiful way for everybody, but it will be an up level for everybody involved anyway. And just to communicate that and inform, and for any human design fans out there, as a manifester, I'm meant to inform, and that's something I wasn't good at in the past. It's still a practice for me. It's like, Kevin, what are you doing? And I'm like, oh yeah, I didn't tell anybody. I just started moving and taking action. And so I'm consistently learning, how can I communicate better? Because miscommunications, I think, are often at the root of almost all conflict. And so if we can come into that and all the things that you mentioned, the map, that's going to be so powerful, and people are really going to be able to get the most out of any of these things that they're doing, events or otherwise. And that's why we wanted to talk about this, is to give people skills and tools, things that you maybe didn't think about, to build a bridge relating with other people. And I think the communities are a really good place to do that. So I'm pumped about the Initiated Man initiative, where, that word's really powerful, that when you're an initiated person, there's a lot to integrate with that. And as you do that as a daily practice, I've seen your life change remarkably. I've seen my life change, and we just want to share. We want to share what we've learned. I don't have all the answers, certainly, but I'm always showing up as a student as well. And then whatever I can share and teach, then I'm happy to do that. So yeah, lots of things to be excited about. We've got our event coming up. You guys have podcasts, communities, man, so many amazing things.
And then I have the Initiated Woman that'll be being launched as well, which will be for women and will be for, what the unique role is of a woman in sacred partnership. And not only how is she initiated in that process of relationship, but also how does she consciously be in the practice of initiating the masculine, and that back and forth initiation that happens. And, being at the New Human will be an initiation process. But then also, now that you're initiated, now that we all are initiated into becoming a new human, now it's our sacred responsibility of, now how do we go out in the world and initiate others? And it actually is something we have to be intentional with, and we have to breathe around and get guidance around, because it changes the world if we can do it in an attuned, supported, heartfelt way.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, and as parents, all of us here, parents, kids don't do what we say, they do what we do.
Yes.
And to me, that is being more and more integrated, is leading by example. And so you may not need a lot of words to really create a big shift in your loved ones' lives and your communities and your families. You get to actually start taking those actions, even if they're a little bit, they start to add up. And so I could feel a part 2 coming to this, because there's so many more layers we could get into, but thank you both for having this conversation, and thanks for the collaboration on the New Human Experience podcast and the Together podcast, coming together to be of service in the ways that we can.
Yeah, and we're so grateful to all of you listening. We're grateful to you, Kev, making the trip out here to the Kootenays so that we could have this collaboration.
Mm-hmm.
And what a juicy topic, integration.
Yeah, we're really honored to get to hold that piece, hold that pillar of that relational integration piece at the New Human. And we're going to have some beautiful pre and post offerings, so stay tuned.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And to give you listeners something to integrate. Rewind to that place where we described the map, write that down, and find one step in there that you can actually work with. What's something currently that you could integrate?
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is an episode where, now that you've listened to it, if you're here with us, go listen to it again, but with notes. Take your time, maybe journal a little bit, and really see what resonates, and see where you can set yourself up for success to, be the most integrated version of you, because it makes an impact in life. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I'd highlight of, this is a challenge and a stretch, is once you do that, find somebody to connect with and tell them about it. What are you going to work on in this new process of integration, so that there's someone to actually relate with about it? And
yeah.
Thanks for being my integration buddies.
Yeah. Oh yeah, thank you both.
Building the new world.
That's right.
Together.
Yeah, I love getting to be integration buddies.
Yeah.
It is a gift. Such a gift.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Love and appreciate you.
Love and appreciate you both too. Thank you.
And to everyone listening, till next time.